You're live.
Hey, Soul Survivors. I'm here with Joshua Schwartz in this ongoing series where we talk about borderline personality, also his relationship that was narcissistic, which caused him to lose his children. So he's being very open and honest with us with his struggles. He's also currently in rehab to overcome some of his addictions. So, Joshua, I'm kind of curious if you could let us know a little bit about the trauma because we're going to be meeting quite often, you and I, to further investigate what brought you into this borderline dilemma and all the ups and downs that you've gone through in life, how you've handled it, and what's been going on in your life.
So
So,
actually, the borderline that stems actually from childhood, and so that's from having a very unstable parent and not getting validation as a child. And so actually, we just talked about this in group today, right? Our core belief system, and my core belief. So as you know, I read the Bible every day, and so my core beliefs are changing. However, I still battle, and it's been 4 years. And even the social worker said today, like, it's going to be a long time to change those core beliefs, right? Because your core beliefs, if you guys don't know, it's what you believe about yourself and what you believe to be true. And so I did a video way back, you guys could check out about this, about is your true really truth? Is your truth really truth? And
everybody's in their own reality, our own perceptions. And I noticed you said parent. Were both parents in the house and only one was
no.
abusive? Okay.
So my mother, I'm the oldest, and my mother was married 4 times. And so my father, so to start there, my biological father was a drug addict, and so she left him when I was 1. Then we move into my mom went to college while I was a kid, and then she got pregnant with my brother and got married to his dad. Well, she was only with him for 2 years. He was physically abusive. He beat me and my mother. He almost killed my mother, and so my mother stabbed him in the face with a knife. It was really
Oh,
wild.
so
I
you've
saw
had
all this.
severe, oh,
Yeah,
and you
yeah, yeah,
saw
yeah.
it.
Yes, I was there. So I remember one time, he had something happened. I can't remember, and I was like 6 years old, and him and my mom got into a fight, and he knocked her out. He like punched her and knocked her out cold in the hallway, and I was hiding under the kitchen table, screaming and crying, throwing pencils at him. But there were instances where, like, I pulled some bark off of a tree in the front yard, and he came and picked me up by my hair and lifted me up and choked me on the wall. But yeah, I mean, I had that trauma, but also my grandfather, who's my we. So my mom was given up for adoption when she was born, and it was kind of like the Annie story. And she was
Okay.
adopted by rich people, and so there wasn't really a connection there, biological connection. And so I think that's why my mom has no diagnosis of narcissism, but you can see a lot of it. You can really see a lot of it.
You
It's
start
always
seeing
about
the
her.
red flags
It's
once you become
well, it's
aware.
always about her. Like I said before, she never calls me. She never, like, I always have to call her. I always have to be the one to make the contact. And then I'm never good enough. So that's where the core belief system we were just talking about comes in, and changing that core belief. And so that's probably where the borderline came from. So I think I said this before in one of the videos, right? There was a book that I read, and I want to put it out there. It's a plug. It's called How We Love by Milan and Kay Yurkovich, because it really gives you a really good understanding of how you love, your love style. And it's not like everybody thinks like the love languages. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is it talks about there's 5 different or 6 different styles, and it's how you were loved and related to as a child, and how you love and relate to your children and everyone around you if you don't have children.
Now,
And
what I
so
think is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, well, I was just going to tell you the love styles real quick, and then yeah. So you've got the chaos, you've got the vacillator, which is back and forth. I love you, I hate
Right.
you. And then you've got the pleaser, which they'll do anything to please you so they can get love. Now remember, picture this person as a little child trying to get this love from a parent. Then you've got the controller, who has to control everything. Then you have the victim, who plays the victim all the time. Then you have the emotional avoider, right? And
Right.
that's somebody who just doesn't, and that's generally where you fit into your narcissism. Like my ex-wife, there's a quiz, you can check it out, howwelove.com. You can take the quiz and find out what your love styles, and they're all bad. I'm not saying none of these are good, but her number one was emotional avoider. We never talked about anything hard. But then you've got this other category that sits over here away from these, and that's where I fit in. And that's called the chaotic love style. So because I had such a chaotic childhood, you use all 5 love styles to try to get the love that you can. So you
Something.
flee. Yeah, you're trying everything you can. And so so that kind of gives you a good idea of how you were related to as a child and how you relate to other people. And so I score in all the categories. Now, vacillator is my highest. I love you, I hate you. I go because that's how my mom is to me, right?
Right.
Like she shows me this like a little bit of love, but then acts this crazy way, and so that's my top one. But I am actually all of the love styles because of that, and so that's what caused a lot of my issues is that, and I think that probably ties into the borderline, but also I'm the oldest, and so I had to go through all of this stuff, right? And
Right.
then going through all of this stuff, I also got to see, like, I went through all of the marriages, and so I kind of was neglected, really. Like, I mean, my mom, don't get me wrong, she provided, right? She
There's a
provided
difference. Yeah.
housing. There is a difference. There's a huge difference between providing for your child and then actually giving your child care and emotionally loving them and connecting with them. I never got that. And even though my mother is biologically mine, right? Or
Right.
biologically my mother, and I'm biologically her child, because she didn't have the biological connection, I don't have it with her. And it's really awkward because biologically I'm her son. And I connect with my kids, like this. And so it makes no sense to me. But I also, again, I'm not blaming my mother. So
Well, it
I look
sounds
at
like she
things
was probably in a trauma state, unable to process.
very
She
much,
was in survival mode. So
very
she
much.
provided, but didn't pick up on the clues of your needs.
Right. And so
And
she's still stuck in that state because it's always about her. And I always have to make it like, in 44, well, let's say 20 some years since I've been out of the house, my mom never called me. Never. I have to be the one that reaches out to do the contact. It's me. I always have to
and
see.
and when you don't reach out for, let's say, a month or 2 or 3, does she like blame you, like about time you don't think about your
No,
mother, or she
nope.
just
We don't even talk. I mean, we'll go an entire year without talk. Maybe we'll talk once or twice in an entire, maybe the holidays, right? This is how it was with my grandfather, which was not my, biological grandfather. We would only see him, and they would really only talk a lot. I mean, they didn't talk too much, and we would only really see them on Thanksgiving and Christmas. That was it. Like, and so that's kind of how it is in my. I don't even see my mom on Thanksgiving. Really, I talk to her on my birthday, and then on Christmas. Those are really the only times we talk. And it's hard for me because I want that family. I want that dynamic, and I can't get it. And so this is why it was so destructive when they stole my family from me and I went off the rails. This is why I'm still having such a hard time. Fast forward 4 years later, I'm still struggling in my mind because I thought I had my family. I thought I finally was out of this, oh, I got my wife, and I love my wife, and I got my kids, and I love my kids, and I got my family, and I'm about done with college, and I got this job, and everything's going really well. And I thought, this is my life. I was like, yay, I finally got, and in a year, a blink of an eye. So always remember this, guys. In a blink of an eye, you can always lose everything like that. And I did. And so it sent me off the deep end. And
right?
that, it triggered that part of me that, because I had been working on healing most of my life. I've seen therapists. My mom always had me in therapy, and I was trying really hard to really fix myself. I mean, there was a period of time where where I was just being stupid, and that was a long period of time. I'm not going to lie, but out of 44 years,
It was only like 40 years.
no, it was like probably 15 or 16 years where I was like really, well, I mean, maybe from 20 to like 30, 18 to like 36 or 37, probably.
So how was she with the other kids? Do any of the other kids have any mental illnesses?
So my brother, because it was really an awkward situation. So my grandpa was a judge in Michigan, and where he was a judge at, um,
What county?
um, I don't know, Ithaca. So he
Okay.
lived in Alma. They lived in Alma, but he was a judge in Ithaca, and I'm not sure what county that is, but so my brother's dad, he cried. Like, I mean, even though he was a serious abuser, like the only way we got out of there, like, so you want to know how we got out of there? So at 2 o'clock in the morning, we had to, so he would come in my room and tell me I had, so he would tell me when I was a kid that monsters were going to come in the window and kill me. He threw me in the pool before, and I think I talked about this, and tried to drown me. And then my step grandpa held me under the shower and my face in the water and tried to drown me. I was terrified of water for 5, 10 years. I would not get in the water.
Was there
Finally,
something, not that it was your fault, because it wasn't your fault, but was there something that triggered them that you noticed?
I was like 5 years old. I
Okay.
wouldn't know that. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
I wasn't
I
that.
don't know if
Yeah,
like
no.
you forgot to put away your
Most of
baseball
my
mitt.
most of my childhood is blocked out. I've blocked all of that out. You know, I have processed some of it, a lot more of it than I processed the kids, but you know, I have processed some of it. But so in order for us to get out of that situation, we had to escape out of the window at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then we stayed in a woman's battered shelter for 4 months. And then he wouldn't give us any of our stuff. So my mom was taking a self-defense course, and so the guy was like a third-degree black belt in karate. They went over there and he wouldn't give him the stuff. So they knocked his teeth out, gave him 2 black eyes and knocked his teeth out, sent him
Wow.
to the hospital, and we got our stuff. And
Well,
so
were there any charges pressed?
no. Not well, I don't know. Again, I was 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
I wouldn't know any of this stuff. I just remember the trauma. That's what I remember. So
Right.
now as far as my brother goes, my brother ended up becoming an abuser. Just because, so like I was saying, my grandpa was a judge. So this guy threw a fit. Oh, there's going to be bias. There's going to be this. There's going to be that. Blah 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 blah. And so because of that, they made sure it got taken out of that, even out of the Elma court system or whatever, and moved somewhere else. And so they really were like came down, and somehow this guy got custody of my brother. And so he grew up with his dad, and then I was with my mom, and he brainwashed my brother the whole time and would say like my mom's a terrible, he would say all these
Right.
things. And so my brother hated my mom forever. We would fight all the time, me and my brother, but I was bigger and older, so I whip his ass. But you know, we would fight all the time, and he ended up becoming an abuser. And I don't know what he's doing now. We haven't talked in years.
Right.
And so I don't know what he's up to. I hope he's not that way anymore. You know, I know his dad mellowed out, and I know my mom had forgiven his dad, and they ended up talking and being together and wedding, you know, not to, but you know what I mean? Like
Right.
in the same room and be able to talk to each other. And
Cordial.
that's fantastic. Like, I agree. I remember when I turned 16 and I was at his height, and I would challenge him. Like, I mean, I would get like, I think one time my mom spit on him or something when we were trading, you know, we were getting my brother something, and he got out of the car, and I jumped right out and got right in his face and said, do something now. I ain't no little kid anymore. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. And so he wouldn't do it. And that just shows you the weakness of a person, that, you know, that you can intimidate and beat up a woman, but you can't, you know, when a 16-year-old kid gets in your face, now I'm your size. What's up now? And so, but yeah, I don't know, you know, forgiveness is key. So, you know, if you're ever in that situation, though, get out of it. But forgiveness is key, and it's for you, not for the other person. It's for you to heal and move forward with your journey. But yeah, my brother turned out that way. Then my mother got remarried again, and this time she was in college, and I was like I think 7 or 8, and we lived in Big Rapids, and she was going to Ferris State for criminal justice to
And
be a
I
cop.
notice you guys move around a lot. That's another sometimes indicator.
Yeah, we did. And so we my mother met my sister's dad in college at Ferris. He played college football there, and then he was going for criminal justice, and she was. So he became a cop, but this was back in the early 90s. And so they weren't hiring women in law enforcement like they are now. And
Right.
so she couldn't get a job as a cop, so she ended up becoming a prison guard. And so we ended up moving to Southgate for a little while, and then we moved to Woodhaven, and that's where she bought her forever home, and that's where she lives now. I think I was like 10 or 12 when that happened. Now, during that, my sister's dad, she had a baby with him, and it's my sister, and now we're all. So my brother's 5 years younger than me, and my sister's 5 years younger than my brother, so 10 years younger than me. And so my sister's dad was a huge time adulterer. Like he cheated, like a serial adulterer. Like he cheated constantly. And my mom,
Was he sneaky about it or was he open about it?
no, he was pretty sneaky. Like,
Okay.
so he was from Ohio and he grew up a farmer. And I don't know, what people know, there's a stereotype about farmers, and a lot of it's true. Like if you meet some hardcore farmers, like, their whole life is consists of getting up at 3 a.m., like farming all day till like 8 at night, and then, it
Right.
repeat for 7 days a week. So it was real ornery, real grouchy, real, like it was crazy. So his dad was really rough on him, and he was really hard on me. And he cheated on my mom a lot. And so what he did to salvage the marriage, he had got caught one time. He was cheating on my mom in our house while me and my sister were upstairs sleeping. He was
Oh,
downstairs having sex with women. And one day my mom left to go to work because she worked midnights at the prison and he worked days. And she left, but parked on the road and then walked back to the backyard and then just watched, and he had her in the house. And so she came in, and I remember being woke up in the middle of the night to screaming and stuff being broken. And I come downstairs and she's throwing coffee pots, smashing it and hitting him with a broom. And there's a girl here. And so I don't remember if I think she punched a girl. I don't remember. But then the girl left. It was all crazy. And
wow.
so what he did to salvage it, like, because he did it a bunch of times, like 4 or 5 times, but what he did to salvage it was adopted me. You see, so
That's that love bombing.
my name really isn't Joshua Schwartz. It's actually Joshua David McCara. And so he adopted me so my name would change and I became his son. And it was when I was about 15 years old. He told me I was a worthless piece of crap and all this stuff. And I ran away. And it's the first time I ran away. And my mom freaked out. And so when they finally found me about a week later, I came back home. My mom said, "That's it." And she said, "You're out. We're done. We're getting divorced." And so they got divorced, and she kept the house, and she had to pay him like 25 grand to buy him out of the house or whatever. And then that was that. And then fast forward a little bit, my mom got remarried again for the fourth time, only she's with this guy now. He's a really, I don't know how he puts up with her. I don't. And in the beginning, I hated him. In the beginning, I was so upset. I was like, he actually punched me in the head twice, but I was mouthy. But of course, he didn't know probably what happened, and I was really mad. It was because
Your thought
I taught.
process is well, it's okay.
Well, yeah, it's different because I'm not saying it's okay, but what I'm saying is this is what sets me apart from a lot of people. This is why people are very interested in what I have to say. It's because I can understand both sides of the fence, you see.
Yeah.
And I don't judge. This is what this book right here, and I'm going to plug this book until the day I die. That's what this book does. You understand? This book allows you to learn how to not judge and see other people's perspective. And so I understood because I was being a mouthy little a-hole and I was talking all kinds of crap to my mom, and that probably triggered her or whatever. I don't know. And so because of that, yeah, that's why he hit me. But this guy, I'm so glad he's with my mom. I'm so glad. Like, I love this. Like, this is the sad part. My oldest son and daughter live 15 minutes away from my mom, and she's never really had anything to do with them. And he makes sure he sends them birthday cards, and it's not even his bio, he's
Right.
just I love the guy to death. David, you're an amazing guy. If you ever see this, I love you, bro. You're like my dad. Even
So
though we have never been super close, you're an amazing guy. And I'm really glad that my mom found somebody like you to be with.
and that just
So
shows though, even after all the abuse that you went through or emotional neglect, that you still have a deep love for your mom. Is
uh,
what it sounds like. Like you're happy that somebody's there for her.
I guess, I mean, I never looked at it like that. However, I mean, I'd like, it's hard because so the one thing that I'm really blessed about, right, is if you've ever read the Bible, God really takes a liking and a care to orphans and to the widows. And the
So
book
I just
says
need
that,
a dead husband and I'm good.
yeah. So for me, I am the orphan. And that's why I'm so blessed. And
Oh.
that's why I have the ability to see this. And God is, so you guys, we're doing all this, but, just pay attention because you're going to see, like I'm really getting serious. Like you're going to see, I mean, you'll see me blow up. Everyone can see, like, if you think you're intrigued on what you see on Facebook, you don't know me. I'm just the same in real life. But I mean, I've been going around the world doing the same thing and like talking to people and getting them to talk about their trauma or getting them to talk about, how they feel about themselves. I've been doing it here. Like, the whole group of men here are like looking to me all the time, even though the therapist, like, we'll be in the room with the
Like
therapist
my
and
turn.
they'll be looking
What's
like, and
interesting too, though, is with your travel, because I went to China and, the way different cultures sometimes treat things, sometimes certain things are acceptable and they're not acceptable in different countries. And I do want to, with my studies, get a little deeper into kind of what works, what doesn't, and how social norms affect people, because people are sometimes battered down to compliance, but are
yeah,
they truly happy? And, checking out the suicide rates and all that stuff. So I do want to, in future ones, talk about some of your travels if you've seen anything. And
absolutely. I've
but
got lots of stories, a whole bunch.
when did either you or others start to say, hey, something's not right, you might have borderliner? And did you get misdiagnosed with anything but prior?
So no, this is the thing. I'm pretty sure I have untreated ADHD. However, I was never diagnosed my entire life. I don't know if it's my mom kept me away from all of that to prevent that because she was a prison guard for 10 years. My
Right.
dad was a cop, and then my grandpa was a judge. So I was the black sheep because I was smoking pot, just trying to sleep with girls, doing whatever I wanted. I was out with my friends all the time,
That's
stealing, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And um so I was really the black sheep of the family. And then she ended up suing the state because of sexual harassment and she won. And so then she switched over and became a foster care worker for 20 years. And so this is one of the things that I don't want to get off topic, but this is one of the things that really irks me. Is my mom understood that I was being railroaded. She knew it. She tells me all the time. She knows I got my children stolen. And this is a foster care worker who worked for
right.
DHHS. And this is what she did. Foster care, she took people's kids. She went to the court and said to the judges, hey, these people don't get their kids. Like, and the judge said, okay, we'll go along. Like, this is what she did. And she
Right.
knew what they were doing to me. And she had every opportunity because my ex-wife, her parents couldn't take the kids because of the allegation of the sexual abuse, because of what her dad did to her.
And yeah,
And so there was
just to recap, your 17-year-old, how did it go?
No, my
She
17-year-old son had sex with my ex-wife, he was a minor at the time, and they had sex. And that's what brought CPS into our house. How that equated to us losing our kids because we didn't have any allegations against us and the kids. It was those two. And so
Do you
now I
know who
lost
initiated it? Did the son or did she? Who
uh
initiated? Do you
I
know?
don't know. I
Okay.
have no idea. I wasn't there. It was that night we were sleeping. I had the kids. I was out of the bedroom, so I'm not really sure who
How did
initiated.
that affect you mentally? Because that's not only your son, but also your wife that betrayed you. That's a double whammy.
I never really thought about it, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
a
did.
trauma
It,
response if you
it,
haven't
it,
thought about it.
well, and that's why I say, like, I'm here trying to process all this information right now because you're right. When I got out of here, so when all of this happened and I got out of here, well, okay, so back up. When all of that happened and we lost the kids, like we lost our rights, I went crazy and I did drugs and I tried to kill myself and I ended up in jail. This is when so remember, they took the kids away because they said, because this happened, right?
Mhm.
Then they said, okay, well, it's because of domestic violence and alcohol. Alcohol, I understand. The domestic violence, neither one of us had domestic violences. So it didn't make any sense. However, in the CPS manual, it specifically says that alcohol, drugs, or domestic violence are not reasons to take the kids or remove them from a home. None of those are reasons. They have to have more than just those reasons to remove the kids out of the house.
Is
Now,
it
if it's
like
a severe,
imminent danger? Is that what they're
yes, yes, and they were in imminent danger, but they said they were. They lied and they did all this stuff. So, but at the end of it all, oh man, isn't it crazy? I ended up with 2 domestic violences. Wow. And 2 DUIs. Yes, of course, because I will not deny, I was drinking like a fish because I was blocking out everything that just happened.
right?
And like I said before, the domestics were like one night she came home to drop off my iPad or something, I think, and like she came to get her clothes and her makeup, And like she was on her way, and I'm still married to her, and she's on her way to come get her stuff to get her, do her makeup and get dressed so she can go sleep with some guy. And I'm just like, I lost my mind, and I like ran outside and I pushed past her, like I shoved her out of the way and I grabbed her shit because her makeup was everything, because she was really pretty, right? And so she would accentuate all that because her looks were her everything. And so I pushed past her to get her makeup and I whipped it all, and she freaked because I threw her, like, you know, and it's expensive, like what is it,
Mac
Ulta?
makeup or something?
Yeah, Ulta, I don't know, whatever. And I'm throwing it all over the road. She's freaking out. So the police got called. So because I pushed her out of the way, it became a domestic violence. So I have these like erroneous garbage charges, and I fought the one, and they what they did is they kept postponing it. This is Muskegon County, so they kept postponing it and postponing it and postponing it and postponing it, and then we got into another fight. So here come the second domestic violence. So now they said, oh, you're gonna take the charge. I said, no, I'm gonna fight it. And they said, okay, we're gonna put you in jail. Well, of course, I didn't want to go to jail, so I took the pleas. But then I got another DUI right after. Like, so
once you're in that system,
isn't it funny how I got 4 charges within three or 4 months, back to back misdemeanors like that? So when I was in jail, you know, I was using meth and all that for like 6 weeks, and I tried to kill myself. You know, I said all of that, and she tried to kill me. They tried to, you know, plot to kill me. When I was in jail, we had what's called a VSO, a veteran service, or no, I'm sorry, a VJO, veteran justice officer.
Because you were Marine. I did, yeah, Marines, yes, right?
I was in the Marine Corps. And so what a VJO usually is it's like, say, a JAG. Like, if you ever heard of that show JAG on TV, it's a naval lawyer. And he was a naval lawyer. So when he got out, he equated to become a VJO. Now, VJOs, they don't defend you in court or anything, but they're lawyers that give veterans advice. And so he knew me, and he knew my story. And 2 years into it, he knew the whole thing, because I had went to him 2 years prior, 2 years prior, I think, to get information, you know, about it. And so he came to the jail and said, Josh, I know you. I know the type of guy you are, and I've been knowing you for a couple of years. I really think you need to go to this program at the VA. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And so it was called the psychosocial program. It was a mental health program here, and it's in building 22. And so I ended up going to that program, and I was there for 2.5 months, and I ended up getting kicked out.
Oh, what'd you get kicked out for?
A plethora of things. Streaming live on Facebook is one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you're not
do you need to log off right now?
No, actually, they made a rule here because of me, but then they changed it, and now you are allowed to stream, but you can't stream. This is why we have these beautiful backgrounds. They can't see anything. They don't know where I am. You know, I can't stream any other veterans.
I'm not in one. It's just
I can't stream any other veterans. I can't stream buildings.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I can, but I can't show the like, I couldn't go up to this building, like, look at this, you know, inside. I can't do that. And so that, and there was a few other things. I looked up my social worker on Facebook. Now, mind you, we didn't get to the point where you asked me about the borderline, but we'll get to that, because I had this diagnosis while I was here, borderline, right, with antisocial features.
When did you get it?
So I didn't know anything about mental health really or anything. I just saw counselors my whole life until I went into the Marine Corps. When I went into the Marine Corps, you remember me telling you, I think I had so I've only been married twice, but the one that I had the 2 oldest kids with, we never got married. Then I had a marriage that lasted like 30 seconds from the Marine Corps while I was in the Marine Corps. And that's a whole nother wild thing too.
We got a lot of upcoming podcasts, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so
now, before you go on, I just don't want to forget this. If you have a mental illness, are you allowed in the services?
So technically, I don't think so. It depends on what it depends on what it is. There is a lot of, but I never had been evaluated or diagnosed, so I had no medical records. So I didn't. So the medical records that I had showed nothing.
Right.
And so so when I went in after a couple of years, I had kind of a couple mental breakdowns because of that girl. And I think I maybe mentioned this to you before. Like, I would take her to the club, or we would go out to dinner, and I would take her to the club, and then she would leave with someone else.
Yeah.
And
that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And so, you continued dating her after that too, right?
Well,
did you guys discuss it? Like, hey, I don't like that.
No.
Yeah, that's a problem. There's a lack of communication.
Well, Yeah, she's still the same way. Today, she's still the same way. She refuses to accept responsibility, blames everyone else. She became pretty I'm not going to get into her story. Maybe later, another time we'll get into
I
that
can
right
already
now. But
assume. OnlyFans
it's
what? No, I'm just kidding.
no, no, actually, she got her master's degree and she
Oh,
was
good for
working
her.
at she was a heroin addict for a long time. She had got pregnant with a baby while we were married, and I was on the birth certificate. And some guy, she got with some guy, and he beat the baby up and killed it. And
Oh, you're
then
kidding. See, that's
no,
why, if somebody is struggling with mental illness, that's why it's so important. Because I see just in your story from tonight, all the drug use, the drinking, the infidelity, the cheating, the loss of loved ones, whether it's through death or through court system, also the different criminal things that happen, how it can destroy your life, you know?
but the beauty of it, it hasn't destroyed my life. All it's done is crushed me. But like I said, I'm reading a book right now by a
And
gentleman named T.D. Jakes, who's telling me about the crushing.
And
And I'm
that's a good
coming
thing
out.
that you corrected me, because you are right. Thank you for
I'm not
correcting
this.
me.
I'm not
Because
destroyed.
no, and what I mean is the life that you had, it
Yeah,
destroyed that and build back better. We can always build
yeah.
back better, or we can stay in the slump that we're in. So you are in
Very.
the process of building back better. So sorry for I didn't
No,
finish
that's all right.
my thoughts
It's
are
all right.
complete in my head. They just don't always come out.
It's it's all good. So I ended up having a couple of breakdowns in the Marine Corps because of this girl. And so my master sergeant pulled me aside into the office and said, Private Schwartz, come sit down. Okay, so I sat down. What's up? All right. And mind you, I'm 30. I went into the Marine Corps. I had to get an age waiver to get in. I was like 2 years past the limit. 28 is the cutoff age for the Marine Corps because
Oh,
it's
I
such a
thought
hard.
is it 35 for the other services?
Yeah, but the Marine Corps is the hardest one of all. That's why it's such a. You can look it up, check it out. It's 17 to 28. That's the age limit for the Marine Corps. After that, you can you can have what's called prior service. So you could be like 35, and if you were in the Army for
Oh,
6 years, minus 6 years off your age, and then you can go into. But me, no, I was in no prior service. So I had a couple meltdowns, and my master sergeant was older than me. Obviously, he was in for like 20 years. And so I go sit down and we talk, and he gives me this spiel, and his analogy is, oh, Mr. Private Schwartz, life is like a launder basket, and blah, 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 blah. And what happens when you put too much laundry in a laundry basket, Schwartz, and it overflows. And so he basically was like, all right, here's what's gonna happen. You're going to go to mental health, or I'm going to have what was his name, Major Cooley, order you to
Hmm.
go. And I'm like, okay. So I vowed. I mean, it was why go through all that headache? You know what I mean? Why?
Right.
So I said, all right, I'll go. That actually helped me. That actually is where I'm at with sitting at
Sometimes, yeah, it's a
100%.
blessing.
It was a blessing. And so that's why I'm sitting at 100%. But I'm 32, 33 years old, 32 years old, was the very first time I had ever heard anything about borderline personality disorder. So when I went to the therapist and we talked about my life, and just like here, I talked about all the stuff, she said, Josh, I think you have something called borderline personality disorder. And she was a really old, and not really old, but probably in her 60s. And she was so sweet.
Oh,
And she was just like, have you ever heard of this? And I'm like, no, I don't know what this is.
right.
She said, all right, I'm going to give you some information. And then next time you come back, I'm going to have you take a personality test. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, sure. So I took the literature and I read it. And then when I came back, I took the test, and she said, okay, this isn't an actual, it was only like 250 questions. She's like, this isn't an actual test, but this is similar. And she said, the results come back, you have borderline personality disorder. And so that's when I first found out that this is what I had. Now, it wasn't put in my file. It was put in there in notes that, suspected borderline, which that's what helped me, right? So when I got out of the Marine Corps, when you separate from the Marine Corps, you go through a 4-day process called SEPs and TAMPs. It's TAMPs. Or SEPs and TAMPs or whatever. I don't know. So it's separation and transition back to the civilian world. But you get 4 days, right? That's it. And one of the things you have to do is you have to be evaluated by the VA. And so I
Okay.
went out, I was evaluated. Well, then I left and I came out. And when I got out, I disappeared to Florida for a while. Then I came back to Michigan. I lived in Miami for a little bit, and I came back up to Michigan. And I was with that girl because I met her at the tail end of my enlistment, my ex-wife, Christy. And so we came back up to Michigan. We were staying with her parents, and that was kind of weird because she was 19 and I was like 32, 33.
There's a
And
lot
so
of
that was,
times big age
yeah.
differences.
But her parents, however, were my mom's, pretty much almost my mom. Well, her dad was 4 years younger than my mom. And it's because they waited until they were 30 to have kids. And my mom had me at 20. So even though we had a big age gap, our parents were still about the same age. So the way she grew up was a lot. This is why we clicked. She grew up similar to the way I grew up. We all, even though she was 13 years younger, we ate dinner at the table
That makes
together. That's
sense.
just what
Okay.
we did. Like, and then, there was a lot of things that drew me to her. She played the piano. My mom played the piano her whole life. When my mom would make dinner, she would go in the kitchen. She would play, start cooking whatever, go out, play the piano for a little bit, go back, do whatever she got to do, play the piano for a little bit. And so there was a lot of these things these qualities that I'm like, okay, I see this. I was raised similarly. So that's why we connected so much. And so when I got back, I got evaluated here at the VA. We were staying with her parents, and I got evaluated right here at Battle Creek, where I am. And they actually had me take this time a 750 question test. It took almost 3 hours to take the
Now,
test.
is the test, is it multiple choice, or is it you have to fill in? Because I think it would be more accurate if you have to fill in, I feel this, or people think this about me, as opposed to just checking off.
I think it's both. I think it's a mixture of it all. I don't remember because it was probably it was in 2012. So that was 11 years ago. So I don't really remember it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And so that was when I kind of got the official, he has borderline personality disorder, but, and depression as well. They called it, systemia. I think it's what it's called.
Okay.
Which means, I think that's what it's called. I have to look it up, but actually let me look it up because I hate quoting things and saying things when I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm pretty sure it's systemia.
Do you have any comorbidities? You said possibly ADHD.
Yeah, I do. So that's untreated. So hold on.
Is it SYS?
I don't know. Constant state of depression.
So it's not systemic, right?
It might be. I can't remember what it is, but what's it called?
Systematic?
Dysthymia. 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 So it's a constant state of depression at a lower, so now, because of all of the kids and everything, I have major depressive disorder access to, along with generalized anxiety disorder, along with borderline personality disorder. So yes, I have lots of comorbidity. But so anyways, that's kind of when I got the official diagnosis. And because of that, I became 60% service connected, because basically what they said is, so you had this before you came into the service. However, it wasn't really that bad. We made it worse. And that's what they do. So we made it a lot worse. So a lot of those things that we do, so compartmentalize, kind of brush our emotions aside, a lot of certain stuff, they expound on that. I mean, that's what that lady told me when I first talked to her while I was in the Marine Corps. She said, they love people like you. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're so easy to break and reprogram. But the problem is, I've been broken and reprogrammed. They can't really unprogram me. I can, but it takes a lot of work. And in the Marine Corps, it's forceful programming. So it's only 90 days, but then it's over the span of the time I'm in the Marine Corps. And now it's really hard to unprogram that stuff.
Now, do they use a lot of like negative talk? Like you suck and you dumbass?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole climate of the military, I mean, I don't want to get so much into how they train or all that, because, that's, I don't know what I can and can't. I mean, I could probably say what I want, but at the end of the day, listen, I still love my country. I love the Marine Corps. I love it did me a service. I signed up and I served the country. I didn't get to go to war deploy, but I did my part. I was active duty and they are taking care of me. And I really have no qualms about it. At the end of the day, like I knew what I was going to do. This is the thing about America. It's volunteer. We went in and signed the dotted line. We weren't forced in there.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I made the choice to do this. And it gave me a lot of good qualities. I'm structured, I'm disciplined. You see, the tenacity I have is insane.
Right.
You look at all the trauma and the crazy things they've thrown at me, and you still can't stop me. And so this is one thing I want to say this. I love this, right? So my name is Joshua and my middle name is David. So if you know the Bible, Joshua was a warrior and I was a warrior as well. And David is a king. And I'm stepping into my kingship right now. And I never looked up name etymology or anything like that until till God found me and then people really started looking at me. So ironically, I went through something called the Return, which is it was a men's retreat, right? And it's kind of digging into you a little bit and pulling stuff out and dealing with it a little. And we had to do, the etymology of our names, and they did it for us and then gave us the name tags. And on the backside, it says what it meant. And so my name, Joshua, believe it or not, actually means truth bringer. And so that is what I do. It's weird because this is what I do. I tell that, I come on here and I say things and I tell the truth and I talk about things like, what I did. And there's a reason that I do that, but it's really weird how it's all connected. So
well, my name means light or of the moon, like of the moon. But mine
there
can
you
mean
go.
light or of the moon. Interesting.
But so yeah. So anyways, back to the military. I ended up getting 60% disability service connection. And that went on for like 10 years or so, maybe a little less, until I lost the kids, until everything happened. We lost the kids. And then that's when I ended up back here or I was over here the first time in 22. And so I was in there and I told you I went through 2.5 months and I got kicked out for Googling or Facebook. I looked up my therapist online on Facebook. Well, I looked her up on Facebook, right? And I mentioned it to her and I think she freaked out like, oh, because they have given them training here because I don't think people don't have the capacity to understand that a lot of the guys that do go in are psychopaths. They are, and they want to kill people. And this is why they go into the military. And so we have people here.
I have heard people, I want to go so I can kill someone.
We have people here today who are that way, and you can see it. You can really see it in them. And I'm starting to see it a lot better. Before I wasn't seeing it so much, but you can see it. And so
can I ask real quick, do you see it in their eyes, their actions, their words?
Actions. It's actions. Okay. And it takes a little while because they're manipulative. You would never know. You would be fooled. I'm telling you right now, a good psychopath or a narcissist comes up, you'd be fooled in a heartbeat. People think they're so smart. I can spot the red flags. BS. You can't.
That's why I want people to realize that, that it wasn't your fault that you missed some of these red flags, because people will beat themselves up over it. Like, why? How could I be so stupid?
You can't. Let me just tell you. Here's what you can do. If you have some suspicions, continuously watch actions. Pay attention. I'm very hyper vigilant. I see the red flags. I see them a lot. I just choose to ignore them because I'm stupid, or maybe because I'm not stupid, but because I have maybe abandonment issues and I have a fear of being alone. So I choose to ignore the red flags. And so that is bad. However, pay attention, because after a little while, I've been around here for just a couple of weeks and I can already see a few people. And you know what I mean? So pay attention to the actions and just listen to what they say. Don't rush into anything super quick. This is why it's been 4 years and I'm not in a relationship. I tried to do the England thing, but
you've been in the rehab for how long now? How many? About a month?
3.5 weeks. I get out Monday.
When did you start seeing the red flags from those guys?
About 2.5 weeks into it. 2.5, 3 weeks into it. That's when I really, it takes a little bit of time, but you really got to be looking. But you got to also understand that we are purely focused on mental health and substance use. And there's also that element too, that you also have to understand. Substance use also can mimic these behaviors. So you might
Good
be dealing
point.
with someone who has substance abuse issues, but isn't really a narcissist, but the substance will make them into that because, and so what happens over time is you create these neurological pathways in your brain. And so these behaviors become predominant in your brain, even though that's not the way you were, you are
Right.
acting this way now. And so you have it. So this is why I want to say this. It's a very, very, very touchy subject. Don't ever try to diagnose anyone with any of these conditions unless you are specifically a psychologist or a psychiatrist, because yes, I will say one thing. Every human being on this planet exhibits these behaviors.
Yeah.
They are nothing more than survival mechanisms in our brains that we no longer need. Some of them we do, some of them, most of them we don't, because generally it comes from the amygdala, which is our emotional driver of survival instincts. And so what'll happen is a lot of these guys will go through trauma, or a lot of people in general will go through trauma. So they'll mimic these behaviors, but that's not really who they are. And
Right.
so this is why I said something, today about, I was like, wait a minute. When I read your title, I was like, is she like, I didn't know if you were trying to play a game to pull me into like, oh, I'm going to pick this guy's brain. Cause I've done that before. Not because,
What he's talking about is I had his ex was a narcissist, so I said narcissist and borderline, peek inside. So he saw narcissist and borderline, and what went through my head too, though, because on the screenshot you see both you and I. It's kind of like what
yeah,
you guys see right now, and then the
it's,
title. So I'm like, I wonder if people are going to think I'm the narcissist,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
yeah, I corrected that for you, and thank you. Always feel comfortable to tell people what you're feeling. That helps clarify things. But yeah, it goes through your head, like, what is
well,
she
I
up
looked at
to?
it and I'm thinking, all right, well, do we really want to go down this road? Because I mean, I don't really want to, like, I can play games. I can be really manipulative and do all that stuff too. I have those traits. I just choose not to do that. And so
Right.
I thought, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like, if this is what she's trying to do is play a game with me, I'm just gonna but
And what's
from the last
interesting,
time we talked, you didn't seem that way. And we talked like this, and you were like, oh yeah, you can come over and we'll stream this and we'll do this and we can do
right?
like an
Come to my
in-person.
house.
And I'm like, wait a minute. All right, you're saying this. And I'm like, I don't think she meant that. But, it just, when I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not. So that's why I was like, this is why I say that. Don't ever try to diagnose anyone, because nobody knows. And I'm not saying just you, I'm saying anybody in general. Nobody really knows the
Right.
behavior, because it might just be a defense mechanism. They might be triggered or whatever. And so a lot of that I have today, like, I can tell you today, I'll be straight up with you today. I was playing games with the social worker today in a nonverbal way, passive aggressively, because number one, she's only 25 years old. And I'm like, yo, you're in here with them. And she's never had an addiction and she's never went through this. And so that kind of set me off a little bit. I'm inside thinking, man, you say all this stuff, but you don't really know. And then on top of that, I feel like they treat a lot of these guys like they're, you know,
Less than or something, or
less than, or not, they're not like, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about or whatever. And I'm not a social worker, I'm not, but I did go through 2 degree programs, and I do have a stack of psychology courses, and I've read plenty of books about psychopath. Like, there's a book I'll tell you I read, it's called Psychopath Free. Check it out. There's a book called Manipulation, what is it, body language manipulation, or manipulation body language, and something else I can't remember, NLP, or I don't know.
when you read that, why did you read it? Did you read it to get
My ex-wife, my
to
ex-wife
understand her, or
yeah.
to manipulate her?
No, to
Somebody.
understand it. I didn't
Okay.
read it until after we lost our kids, until
Oh,
after
okay.
everything happened. I didn't understand why she would make a statement like, I'm having and then that's the drug. So here we are, right? You want to talk about a substance induced craziness, right? She made a statement, and I have it on paper that says, I'm having a hard time choosing my kids over meth. And I lost all respect for her when I read that, because you got to remember something. I didn't know she was using meth. I had no idea she was using meth. I was like, oh my gosh, what? And she had been using it for 8 or 9 months. I mean, she played it
Wow.
off. She'd been around me a lot of times using
Does it
meth,
have
and I
an
had no
odor?
idea.
Does it
No.
have an no odor? Okay.
It's odorless. It's yeah, it's no, but also meth for some reason affects women much differently than it affects men. And so, like, when she did it, she could go for 2 weeks straight and stay up and do it. And I did it for like a day and a half, and it went into psychosis, and I went crazy. Many times I went crazy. I went into psychosis. And so um with that being said, like that's a component of what I was talking about, of where you see, these behaviors, but she still has these behaviors regardless. But anyway, so I read this book, Psychopath Free, and then I started to panic because I saw myself in this book and I was like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, am I a psychopath? So then I started really researching. However, I brought this up to a close friend who is also, he was getting his doctorate in the mental health field, and he is the deputy director of the Michigan VA. And I brought this up to him, and he laughed. And I'm like, what are you doing? This isn't funny, bro. And he's like, bro, you're not a psychopath. Like, I know him. He knew my family. We spent time together. Our kids spent time together. He's like, bro, listen to me. And this is where the whole, I want to say, he's the one that told me this. And
okay.
so I'm gonna give him the credit. He said, listen, Josh, every person in this entire planet has all of those traits. What makes it different is some exhibit it much more than others. He said, we all have the same traits. I have them, you have them, everyone. He says, you don't have them to the extreme. Psychopaths and narcissists and sociopaths, they have them to the extreme. That's
But
why
do
there's
they
this.
need to be triggered? Can it be latent till later on in life?
So
To wait.
so generally, okay, yes, it can. In psychopathy, no. Psychopathy is actually what they say in psychopathy is, so let's just say, I think the way they described it, I can't remember, so please don't quote me on this, is that let's say our prefrontal cortex is about the size, like 15%, right? And when they
It's right
did a
up
brain
here.
scan, right? And so someone who has psychopathy is generally like, say, 7%. It's much
So
smaller.
psychopathy is born with it.
Yes.
Sociopathy is through.
Sociopath is through environmental. And so generally, like, I could have became a sociopath. Now, I didn't. The reason why I think my ex-wife I think she's a sociopath or a narcissist, because she was molested. So that is something that I thank God every day, every single day, because I don't know what that's like, and I don't ever want to experience that, because I know loads of people that were molested, and they are freaking nuts. I mean, you think I'm nuts, and I am nuts. These people are really nuts. But I could never ever, and I experienced betrayal by my parent. I experienced abandonment. I could never fathom what it would be like for a parent to steal that vulnerability and innocence away from you and just betray you on levels that go
Right.
beyond. And so I feel, so this is the thing, right? I feel horrible for these people, because even though they act out and they do these things, they have this deep trauma that's so deep seated, it's almost impossible to really work through. And you can generally see it. So if you want to see somebody who's been molested, like, if you want to see their actions, generally in women, they'll do one of two things, and men too. They'll either go on one end of the spectrum and
Yeah.
just screw everyone. They'll be banging everybody. And that was my ex-wife. She had over 300 partners, she told me. And then or the other side of it is they'll shut down, and they won't want a man or
Right.
anyone to touch them. A lot of times what you see when you see the transition from, heterosexuality to homosexuality, a lot of those people have been molested. Yes, I'm not
I
into that science, but there are probably people that were born and feel like I don't know that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know that. But what I do know is a lot of those people had sexual trauma as children, and they transitioned into that. So,
yeah. Yep. They don't trust a certain sex or feel safer with a different one. And there's I'm not gonna say it's all encompassing, but there's probably a lot of truth to that too. And
so it's,
people don't want to talk about it at this time. It's not politically correct yet.
well, I'm the guy that talks about whatever I want, and I don't care if people hate me, because at the end of the day, I'm going to say that shameless plug again. And there's one thing that I said to you a little while ago, and I did a video on this before. You guys can check it out. Is your truth the truth? Right. And that's our core belief system. And our world is so screwed up today because everybody thinks that their truth is the truth. So this is why it's so important that we stand on the real truth, the truth. I don't care what anybody says. I was agnostic for 40 years. God wasn't in my house. We didn't have Bibles in the house. We didn't go to church, right? And I didn't seek God when all of this stuff happened. I mean, I kind of did a little bit, but nah. God saved my life. I mean, look at it. 3 attempted suicides. Well, actually, one when I was 16. So 4 attempted
Oh my
suicides.
goodness.
And then, yeah, I took 2 bottles of pills and had to have my stomach pumped when I was 16. So 4 attempted suicides, 2 attempted murders, and all of the other
On you,
situations that
murders on you.
on me, all this other stuff. So God saved my life. So that's when I began to read this book. And what happens, and I think I said this to you before, and I'm going to say it again, is you start reading this book, right? And then after a little while, the book starts to read you, and you become convicted, and you start to see your behaviors, and you're going, okay, Jesus didn't say it's okay to do this, or it's okay to do. This is why I get, I just let people believe what they want, and I don't try to shove it down their throat. What I do is I try to show my trauma, like we are doing right now. I try to show my trauma. I try to get them to understand that I have so much that I can relate to you on so many levels. And in that, I found some sort of healing and some sort of grace and some sort of love that I never knew before. And so what did I do? I chased it. I chased it more than anything.
You
And once
become
I began to
thirsty.
chase it, then what happens? Now this transformation begins to happen inside of you. And so it's so important because this book is truth. Is not, people say this, oh, they say this, they're about God or Jesus, or why does he do this, or why, the Bible says this. Yeah, the Bible has a lot of crazy stuff in it. I'm not gonna deny that. The Old Testament was just that, the Old Testament. Then we have the New Testament. That was the covenant with Jesus, right? And so the whole idea was, if you really stop focusing so much on the story and focus on the lessons, on what he is trying to teach you, it's all about being a very good human being and how to be. And that's why it's truth, because at the end of the day, I can believe my truth is right and go steal $50 for someone, or I can read this book and know it's wrong to steal $50 from someone. You see the difference? Because
Yeah,
your
because
moral
people will
compass,
try to justify it. It's like, look, they got $2 million
yeah,
in their purse right now. Like they can
that's
afford
your more
bucks. You
that's
hear
your
that a
moral
lot, or
compass.
people who steal from stores and they're like, it's a big corporation, it's not hurting anybody. They don't see the
Right.
trickle down effect, and that's that entitlement.
Hmm.
Whether it's a huge corporation or somebody poor, it's not yours. Like,
Right, right. And so that's why it's very important for me that I stay in that book and that I stand on that truth, because I know 100% without a reasonable doubt, my core beliefs and my truth are all screwed up. They're all jacked up. And if I listen to that, I'm going to continue this terrible cycle of behavior and keep going through all this garbage. I am 44 years old. I am so sick and tired of living that life in a constant chaotic situation. I am ready. Listen, and like I said before, I went through 2 bachelor programs. I've got honorable military service. You know what I mean? I raised kids. I went through lots of counseling, marriage seminars by myself. I've done so much to be successful. I'm ready for it.
mm,
Well, but here's the thing, until you can actually self-reflect and say, and this is what I talked about reading this book and it reading you, it started to read me and I started to see my behaviors. Now it's time to change those behaviors. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. So later on in life, I can be super successful. And that is the whole point. And it's not about being rich for me, because, somebody told me today, I think, or this morning, they said to me, they said, you're going to be rich. I know it. I can see it. You're going to be rich. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't need to be rich, but it would be good to be rich. You know why? Because the amount of people I could help. Oh my gosh.
right.
And so it's not about the money for me. It's about being successful to me in life is, what is the legacy I'm leaving behind? How many people's lives am I touching? Who am I helping get out of the hole that I was in? Who am I throwing that rope to, or giving that ladder to and saying, come on, I can help you. And I got this, it's like, think about it like this, right? It's like the best analogy I can give you. Imagine you're out there and you're ice fishing, right? And you're in Alaska somewhere and you're out ice fishing, but you're far away from any town, and the ice breaks and you fall through, right? Well, you got a couple buddies who know you're out there. So then your one buddy comes out, right? And what happens? How does it work? Well, generally when there's a couple people, when they do that, they'll tie a rope around, and this is what the firemen do, right? They'll tie a rope
Oh,
around the one person, and the one person will walk out, but the other person will stay back, right? I got a rope, right? I got a rope, and that rope is my God, and that God pulls me back when I go in. And so this is what people don't understand. My ex-wife, like, I went to hell for that girl. I completely went to hell for that girl. And I mean, I can tell you what exactly what I did. I can tell you when, the time we were laying in bed together and we're both high and on meth and, we just got done having sex and we're sitting there and I look at her and I'm like, I need you to come home. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy because I'm like, we got these kids, I need you to come home. And she's just looking at me like, what are you like looking around like we are home, you know what I mean? She's like, what? What? And I'm like, no, I need you to come home. And she looked at me and clicked and she said, no, I like it here. Why don't you come stay with me? I said, this isn't where I belong. So it got intense and deep. I've
Yeah.
seen the spiritual side. And that's just one incident. There's been a lot. God's given me so much revelation. It's unreal. This is why I know I have a huge calling on my life. Again, this is why I'm reading that book, because my biggest problem that I had was the why. It's always the why with everyone, the why. And so many people get stuck in their life because they get stuck on the why. And I was stuck on the why. And so if I can recommend a book, it's called Crushing by T.D. Jakes. And it talks about how the grapes, the vine dresser grows these beautiful grapes, right? But then what happens? In order for it to develop into the beautiful, tasty, amazing wine, it has to be crushed. And so
Oh, good point.
and if you look into the Bible, almost every single major character or player in that book was crushed before they stepped into their calling. And this is what's going on in my life. This is why you hear all this stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's got extreme trauma. I was crushed. I'm being molded in the fire. I'm being crushed by the vine dresser
It's
in
almost
order
like
to come
that.
out to
That's
be the
almost like that death to rebirth, remaking yourself.
right.
So it is
Well,
happening
I'm not
again. As
remaking myself. He's remaking. Well, I also don't like to say he, and I know some because I say this. God is, and this is my analogy. This is, and I love it. God is both the essence of masculinity and femininity. Yes, God man, according to the Bible, God made man first, but also said that we weren't to be alone. So he took part of man and made woman, right? And so the way God says this is God says that we are images of God, right? Well, if I'm an image of God, then, and God is masculine and feminine, then I'm only half that image, right? So when the Bible tells us a man and woman come
to
together
become
and
one.
become one, and what happens, right? So when two become one, they also become that or not also, that's when they become the image of God. And when they become the image of God, what can happen then? They can create. So now they're creators, right? So
Oh, yeah. Take it one
so
step
hold on.
further. I like that.
Well, I'm going to go even farther. I'm going to blow your mind because this is my analogy. I'm going to coin this because this is my analogy. So I don't have anything here that I can use. I do. Right. Perfect. So we're going to use my Xbox controller, guys. All right. We're going to use my Xbox controller. And this is what I'm going to show you how this works. So this Xbox controller is going to represent man and woman, right? And so with this Xbox controller, right, what does it have? It has batteries, right? So we got a battery right here. Here's a battery, right? So then we got the Xbox controller, right? But and I usually use a TV remote, but I'm going to use this. This is all I have because I don't have a TV remote here. So I want to play a video game, right? And so in order to play that video game, I'm going to pull out my trusty Xbox controller. But there's no battery. So no matter what I do with this thing, it's not going to play the Xbox game, right? All
Right.
right, well that ain't work. So I'll set that over here. All right, so let's grab this battery. All right, so I still want to play Xbox, right? I'm gonna go play Xbox, and so I get this battery out, and I'm over here. I'm trying to play Xbox, but this ain't doing me no good either. What the hell is going on, right? This ain't working. I can't play this game. Shit. But what happens when I take this battery and I put it inside the controller?
It becomes whole
You
and
see the
useful.
you see the grand
Yeah.
design?
That's
That
a
is the
neat.
grand design of life. You can see the design. There it is. It's everywhere you look. It's grass, it's trees, it's the dirt, it's the ground, it's the seed, it's the food, it's everything. The grand design is there. You have to see it. So that is my analogy. I coined that, and
I like
I use
that.
that for everybody. I use it for everybody because it allows you to see the analogy. So now look, the controller works and we can play a game because it has the battery. So the controller is the female, the batteries are the male. You put the battery into the female, and now you become the creator. And
Very
so
cool.
That's how, but anyways, I'm
That's
very, I
neat.
love God. I love God so much. So God really saved my life. And this
And
is
that's
why
one thing too, though, is sometimes you have to go through a mortification. I know a lot of people are mad at God. For some of my viewers, they might not believe. All I
Mhm.
ask is, or suggest, what I suggest is at least think about what you believe. You guys can believe whatever you want to believe, but I know with my mom, I asked her, I'm like, what do you believe? She was from an atheist or agnostic family, and she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, you
So the
just,
biggest thing
I
is
want her to think
you
about
said
it.
it. You said it. What did you say? This is it. So this is the revelation God's given me. This is why I know my calling is huge. So I'm going to tell you that this is the thing. Most of the world is godless. Why is it that way? Because I need to clarify something. So for your viewers and everybody, let me clarify this. Spiritual, remember, I was agnostic for 40 years. God found me. I didn't find God. God pulled me out of that pit. Okay. Religion is not the same as relationship. I have a relationship with the spiritual creator. Okay. And I read it, this word, and I go through this. And it is important that we go to church. It is important that we stay in
Are you
fellowship
saying
because that's how we defeat.
or
It
isn't?
it is. Well, it's important to stay in fellowship. We are the church. I'm not saying you have to go to a building somewhere, but I'm saying it's you're having church when you got two or three people. Like right now, we're talking about this. We're having church. We are the church. You understand? So it's important to fellowship because that's how we defeat the powers that at be. Right. However, I want to say people are so upset because imagine this is one thing I learned on my travels because most of Europe and most of the UK is all super ritualistic religion. They don't really have new age churches. They haven't transitioned to the new, where we are right now. And so it's mostly like 60 and above that are going to the churches. None of the young people are going. And I've been to a lot of their churches over there. I went and sat to a Catholic church and to a Church of England and a Greek Orthodox church. And I've been to a lot of churches over there because this is what I do. I bring my Bible, I talk about God. And so I'll tell you that the reason why these people are so mad, imagine, and this is a thing that I learned from the military. Imagine being told your whole life to do something and be a certain way, but then all this other bad stuff around you is happening. And you're thinking, it doesn't make any sense. God is so good and all this and all that. Yet these people are doing this and they're doing that. And it didn't make any sense to me. And so they look and they get mad because they're like, if God was real, he wouldn't let any of this stuff happen.
A lot
However,
of people struggle with that. Yes.
yes. And so, however, let me say this, right? Let me say it's people, not God. God gave us the ability to have free will. It was people who stole my kids. It was people who hurt me.
Good
God,
point.
God, if in order for the world to work the way it is, God has to let it happen. But what does God do? And I am a testament of that. And you're going to see it expounded and it's going to be tenfold. I am a testament of God taking something that was so broken and beat up and making something so beautiful out of it. The crushing, taking the grapes, crushing them, and making them into some fine wine. And
Kind of
so
like
I am a
Oreo
testament.
cookies when you got to crumble them so you can put it on your ice cream.
Yeah. So, this is the thing, right? Like, I something saved my life. So there's a lot of stories I challenge people to read. Lee Strobel, I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was an investigative journalist for the Boston Tribune, I think, or no, the Chicago Tribune, and there's actually a movie you guys can check it out. It's called Case for Christ. And so this guy was an investigative reporter, hardcore atheist, right? He was a very logical thinker, and this is the way I was. To get to faith, it took a lot. And so somebody took his wife while he was off working to church, and God snatched her. All right. And so when he came back and he started noticing she was going to church all the time and all this stuff, and she was starting to change, he got really upset about it. He got angry.
Right.
He got into fights all the time. And he's like, I didn't marry. This is not what I signed up for, blah, 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 blah. So he was going to divorce her. So he went to his muse or whatever, his editor or whoever it was, mentor, editor, whatever, and he talked to him. And the guy said the smartest thing anyone could have ever said. Bro, you're an investigative journalist. Duh, do what you do. follow the trail. So what did he do? He spent 1 or 2 years researching the Bible, going to all these places, interviewing these psychologists, psychiatrists, huge people, priests, pastors, everybody. And guess what? He quit his job and became a pastor. Oh my gosh, imagine that. There's another story, right? A guy, I can't think of his name. I wish I could look it up. There's another story about a guy who was a neurosurgeon. I'll have to look up his name. Actually, I'll just give it to you. So the book is called Proof of Heaven, and I read it. And so what it is this guy is a neurosurgeon, and Proof of Heaven. Okay, Eben Alexander. His name's Eben Alexander. The book is called Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. So here's another. He's a brain surgeon. He thought he was God. Read the book. He'll tell you. He thought he was God. God
Like
didn't exist.
his own God or God of the world? Because some people
No,
think they're their own God.
No, he was God. Like he controlled the brain. He was a surgeon. He was a
Okay.
hardcore surgeon, and he, brain surgeon. He had the power of life and death in his hands.
Yeah.
There's no God. He was the God.
Okay.
And he'll tell you this in the book. And what happens is he contracts the most extreme, rarest case of meningitis. It's something that's so extreme that it's like a 0.1% of people ever experience. He contracts it, and he doesn't know how. And so normally when you have viral meningitis in your brain, I think it was, maybe it was viral bacteria, I can't remember, but when you get it in your brain, your spinal column, it's full of fluid, and so this fluid turns kind of milky.
Okay.
His was green, like green pus. It was
probably bacterial, I think.
He should have been dead. Like he'll talk about it. So he was basically brain dead for an entire week. He was on life support 7 days. In that 7 days, when miraculously he's healed, comes out of it, wakes up, and tells an account of he died and he went to heaven. Avid believer in God now. Imagine it. There are so many stories of this. It's unbelievable. And this is how I was the same way. I was so logical. I'm such a lot. You see, I have plethora of information. I love education. I research and research and research. I went through 2-degree programs. I'm going to get my master's right now. Maybe that won't stop. Maybe I'll get, I love it. And so when you get there and you can't explain, there's no other answer. The answer is faith. The answer is God. It's just like Stephen Hawking. Right before he died, he did a paper with him and a couple other people. And he basically, if it's very scientific, it's hard to read. I can't even really read it. I'm not an astrophysicist, but he basically pointed to the evidence of there's more evidence there is a God than there isn't a God. And we're talking an astrophysicist, hardcore atheist. These are all prominent people in society who have proclaim their faith and their love for Jesus. And so it's really insane. It's not me going to a church. It wasn't me. It was me doing the research, digging in, and then the transformation began to happen. And so I challenge people all the time. People want to say things about God and the Bible and all this. And I say, okay, have you read the book? Because I don't really want to discuss something with you if you really haven't read that book, because it's like me being a mechanic or a doctor and you being some layman guy who doesn't know anything. You're just some guy who comes in, and layman, by the way, is not a bad term. I don't want to, you're just a regular guy and you don't know, and you want to argue with me about, did I lose you?
You're frozen for some reason.
Oh, it unfroze. Okay. Sorry. And it's like arguing with me about, say fixing my car, right? Well, you're not a mechanic. You can't fix my car. Like, so why would I even have a conversation with you about it if you don't know anything about transmissions? You want to tell me about my transmission, but you know nothing about it. Now, if you've researched and you know about transmissions and fixing transmissions, we can have a conversation. So right. I generally try not to debate people that don't really have the information. I've had so many people. I was in Italy, right? I was in Italy. I was in Naples, and I was staying at the first hostel, and I ran into a bunch of people from Brazil. And one of the guys really was angry at God. He had a really rough story. He had been robbed a bunch, shot twice, all kinds of stuff. He was like 30 years old, broke out of Brazil. It was or maybe it was Venezuela. I think Venezuela. Anyways, he had a really rough life. He broke out. He got a bachelor's. He got a job as an IT, making good money, living in Italy. whatever. And we had a conversation about God. He did not. He was very atheist. He didn't want to talk about it. So we started talking about it. And so I asked him, do you even know the Bible? And his response was,
I
oh,
don't need to.
I went to Catholic church, blah, 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 da, da, da. So I said, hold on, hold on. I said, did I ask you if sorry, hold on one second. I'm just looking. It says it's waiting for the signal. It must have cut out. Anyways, so I asked you, have you read the Bible? I didn't ask you where you went to school. And he's like, oh, I told you we had to do that. I said, no, 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 no. Again, you're giving me an answer to a question that I never asked. I didn't ask you where you went to school. I asked you, have you read the Bible? So he had to answer and say, no, not really. And I said, okay, what makes you think that I want to have this discussion with you? Do you know what I mean? Like, you
Right.
don't know the Bible and I know it well. So why would I want to have a discussion with you when you think you're going to throw off some opinions is what you're going to do? And of course, a lot of the Bible people say is opinion because there's some things that aren't really factual that we can't really, a lot of it. I have been traveling the world. I went to Corinth and saw where Paul was judged. And I saw Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, is a real person and I visited where he was and I saw this stuff. And so, in all of that, like I've been doing the research, so it's hard for me to debate with someone who hasn't. So, but
Right.
I'm not. Again, I don't push my belief on anybody. It's your choice, man. If you choose that and you want to believe that, cool. If you don't want to believe it, cool. I just pray that one day you get to that conclusion. I pray that you make it there. I really, really do. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's just really crazy, but so God saved my life, and that's what's helping me through all of this trauma right now is
Yeah.
is
Now, are
God.
you also going to therapy? I know,
So
like in
so
the rehab, they
no,
probably have.
no.
Do you plan on
So
it? Or do you just,
yes. So I've been begging them. So really, when I came here, I was just smoking weed from morning, and I don't want to just say just smoking weed, but from morning till night, I was smoking weed, and then I was drinking beer, 2 or 3 beers at night every night. And so I was really just doing it to cover up what was going on inside of me. And so, with that being said, I begged them. I've been begging them for therapy here, but they don't do therapy here because here is really just focusing on getting off of drugs. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, let's
right.
get off drugs and focus on how not to use again. However, if I get into this program, I'll know tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning if I go to something called the CWT, Compensated Work Therapy Program. So I'll stay in a house here in Battle Creek. I will be off campus. I'll live in a house that's the VA. It's like a 3/4 house. So I'll go there. I'll have a curfew. I'll still do drug and alcohol tests. I'll have to go to AA, and I'll come here and I'll work here. But they don't. You get like $10 an hour. They don't report it to anybody. The IRS. Nobody. It's therapy. It allows you to stay around here, kind of reestablish yourself, get housing, continue in outpatient therapy, and it gives you a little money in your pocket and helps you out. So I'll know tomorrow if I get into that. Pray, please, people pray for me because if I don't, I have nowhere to go when I get out of here, and I really don't have much money, and so I'll probably be SOL if they don't. I will be homeless again, which isn't that big of a deal because at the end of the day, I have a decent VA check, and it'll come again in 2 weeks, and I have a brand new truck, and my son's bringing me my truck this weekend, and so I was in the Marine Corps. I have
You're
camping
a
gear.
survivor.
Yeah, I'll be all right. I'm not concerned. But I wouldn't like to do that because I am getting the help that I need. I am working through, I want to process all of this stuff that happened, all of the trauma, all of the crazy stuff that I've told you guys that we've talked about. And tonight we've just talked about childhood, really. We didn't talk tremendous amount over the kids. And that's kind of how I was hoping we could structure it, where I got to explain my childhood. Then we'll move fast forward into like high school years. Then we'll fast forward into the adult years. And then all the way until now. And that gives your viewers a sense of really who I am and the things I've seen, instead of people making judgment calls and they think, oh, because I kind of I commented on one of the comments on your page because it seemed like a lot of people will generally have a bias. We live in a world where it's honestly a woman's world, and it's hard for women, or anybody for that matter, And it's funny because we have this world of people want to scream equality. Women want to equal this, equal that. But well, if that's the case, then you better get it in your head. Equally, women beat the crap out of men just like men beat the crap out of women. Equally, men can lose their children just like women can lose their children.
Right,
But see,
right.
when it comes to those that need to suit their needs, that doesn't work. This is why it's such a fight in the world, because we are not equal. I hate to say it. I'm much stronger than you. I could put you down in a second. So that
Right.
means you're not my equal. You're not even close to being my equal. Now, as a human being, absolutely. We both have brains. We both have feelings. We are both human beings. We
There are
both have
differences,
emotions.
yeah. And we
But
need we can complement each other on those differences
there you go. And
and
that's the thing.
correct each other on the with the
Exactly.
differences, as opposed to all being the same. Then yeah.
So there's a word in the Bible for that specific thing that you just said, and it's called help me. HELPMEET. And what it means is this: a helpmeet is your partner who complements the characteristic traits that you lack. So women are
Right.
much more emotional than men. Women are much, they're more, women tend to
Like
think
nurturing.
more logical. They're nurturing, but they're also a lot more logical. Not always, but I mean, they, at least in my experience, from what I've seen, but that maybe just be my trauma. I don't know, but it seems that women can be, look, they mature much faster than boys do, and
Right.
so there are a lot of things. So these characteristic traits, that's exactly what a helpmeet is. That's what it is. That's the whole point of two becoming one. Because I lack things, you lack things. Because say we're out in public one day and you're getting robbed or raped, you don't have the ability to stop that, right? But say I'm standing there next to you, it's not going to happen because somebody knows that if they try that, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so that's the whole concept of it. And we live in a culture right now that, oh, we're the same and we're this and that. You know, I I don't, I'm not, what's that? What is that? What is it called? The whatever culture. I
So
don't know. I don't know what it's called. There's a word for it, but for me, I don't fit into that little mold. I'm sorry. Like
they saying
the,
devil's advocate or something?
no, no, no. I mean, that's it. I'm trying to think if it's the counterculture or something like that, where we
Oh,
have to like challenge the ideals of that. Like I am woman, hear me roar. Like, yo, go roar, but let's go out and shoot a deer, or let's go out, you know what I mean? Let's go out and do some. And I'm not saying there aren't women that do that. There are
right.
plenty of women that do that. However, that isn't God's design. Do you know what I mean? And how I use that analogy is, for example, we did the Xbox controller, but if I had a remote or even the Xbox controller, let's just say I had two Xbox, and this is going to probably piss some people off, and I'm sorry, this is just me. If
Uh-oh.
I if I have if I have two Xbox controllers and I want to play Xbox, can I put those Xbox controllers together and play Xbox? No, because it's not going to work. If I have two sets of batteries, can I put the two sets of batteries together and use the Xbox? No, because it's not going to work. It only works by the design. You have to have the batteries, you have to have the controller. That's the only way that this thing will work. And that's society, that's life. And I'm
There
sorry
are
if
there are
people,
some things as far as, the population. We do need, I know sometimes lesbians do the in vitro fertilization or they find a man for a while, but um we'll save that topic for a different
yeah, yeah,
night.
yeah, yeah. That's fine.
But so in middle school versus high school, was there a lot of a big difference between those type trauma years? Was one of the baby daddies better or worse? What was the longest she was married?
Right now, she's
Which
married
is
to the guy,
how
which has
long?
been like 20 some years, 25,
Okay.
26, 27 years. So, I mean, in my mom's case, she got a raw deal, but you also got to understand that we talked about the trauma as her as a baby and being adopted and kind of the non-biological connection. And because of that, she ended up, choosing piss poor men, not being able to choose the right men. And so again, my father was a drug addict. My my father was a drug addict. My brother's dad was an abuser. My sister's dad was an infidel, or not an infidel, an adulterer. And then she's with this guy now, but he's a really good guy. Like I said, he's a great guy. So, uh, but I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I blocked majority of that out of my life because it just really serves me no purpose. I really need to just, I processed a lot of it already. And a lot of it makes sense. Obviously, I can give you reasons why things happen and I can go through it. So that's not really, that's kind of old and it's kind of out of the way. So for where I'm at now, like I don't think anybody was, better than anybody else. Um, so I don't really know how to answer that question, but in high school, it was really tough for me because also my dad was a cop. And
Oh,
so I got picked on all the time. I got beat up all the time in school
oh,
because
they
my dad was a
beat.
cop. Oh
Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah. I got shoved into lockers and well, so I got picked on, pushed, punched in the mouth. I mean, I had kids wait for me outside of gym class and just try to fight me, beat me up. I had I remember I was riding the bus one time and I had braces and I wasn't the cool kid because my dad was a cop. And so like, I had braces and I was sitting on the bus and so I had a kid tap me on the shoulder because we had this thing called the Silver Star. Something it was like a school magazine in middle school, and
okay.
somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around like this and say whatever, and he's like, "Oh, blah blah." I said something, and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And I turned back around, and the kid sitting in the seat in front of me just socked me right in the mouth,
Oh,
and they just were laughing about it. So I got picked on and beat up my whole life. It wasn't until I was 18 years old where I really took a stand and said, enough is enough. And then I became very, very aggressive. And then, I mean, I'm still the nice, happy go lucky guy. I would just be, if you put me in a situation where I have to defend myself, I no longer was the offense or defense. I went offense right away. I mean, I immediately, if I felt threatened, I went right for the charge because I
right.
learned at a young age that the one who wins the fight is the one who attacks first. And so, not always now when you're an adult, but that's what I learned. So I went with that, and that's how I ran. But um, as far as like everything goes, now I try not to get into fights. I try to walk away from stuff. I try, now this is one of the reasons why I'm back here is because of the fact that, it's been so crazy and I have been getting into a lot of fights in Europe. And a lot of it I think has to do with the kids. And then a lot of it had to do with the rejection from that girl, knowing that I'm borderline and knowing,
Now,
everything.
what starts those fights? Because I've never really been in a fight, and I just don't
uh,
like.
it's
Did
stupid
somebody
stuff.
look at you wrong, or
Generally, yeah, I would be drinking and somebody will say something and I'll take it the wrong way and I'll just go off the handle and I'll, for I would say the last year I was doing all this, I was the one probably starting to fight. I was going there, and I wasn't looking to fight. That's not it at all. Like I wasn't going there like, oh, let's fight. I was
right?
going there hanging out. And if somebody said something to me the wrong way or I took it wrong, then it was on. Then I was like, okay, it's on now. But I mean, I wasn't looking for fights. I was just looking to go have a good time. But the problem is, I'm very extroverted. I'm very loud, and then it can be very obnoxious. And when that happens, it pisses people off. But also, you know, um, I don't know how long you've been watching me. Most people can see I have a light. I have the light inside of me. Most people can see it. And so because of that, it irritates and pisses off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like they get really mad about it. And there's a meme on Facebook like sometimes my spirit irritates your demons. And that's really what it is. And so people get really aggressive with me. Well, now, I before I was unable to handle that. Now, I mean, I'm a Marine now and I'm in shape and I know how to fight. I know how to kill people. I don't want to kill anybody. I'm not saying that
Right.
like, but I've been trained to do that. I'm not trying to be a tough guy, but I have this training and I'm also, I can be aggressive. And so generally when I get into fights now, I don't lose. But the last one that I was just in, I got cut that I lost pretty bad, but I reflected on that and said, that was completely your fault. what are you doing? Like, this is why I had to come back and check myself in, because that was my fault, hands down. I put myself in a bad situation. I shouldn't have been out getting wasted. And then I surely shouldn't have been out looking for drugs. And then I was, and I got into such a bad situation that it just, it was a horrible,
And you
horrible
were in a
thing.
different country. If you got arrested in a
Yes.
different country, that,
I know, and I didn't. Luckily, they didn't do anything. The police didn't even show up at all. It was
oh,
insane. I came back to the hospital and my hand sliced wide open, and it was just insane. And well, my hand and my arm, like the flap of skins, is hanging here, and it's just like really deep. And so, the police never came, and it's whatever, because they're really poor. I mean, it was in Venice, Italy. I mean, Europe's very poor right now. I mean, we're struggling really hard, but we're still, way above the mark for any other country in the world. So it's pretty crazy, but
crazy. So, what are your plans after? I know you're going to be working on what is your master's that you're a divinity?
divinity, yeah, it's what you need to be a pastor or a chaplain
How long
or
is that program?
3 years.
3 years.
And so I've already did 9 years of college. So now we got three
Good
more
for
years to go.
you. Good for you.
I should have just did a doctorate, right? But
I
I mean,
know.
I've had to go through trauma and do all of this. So I dropped out of college 3 times. I failed 3 times, and luckily my VA counselor he knew my story, knew everything, and I wasn't gonna finish college. I was like, nah, and he's like, bro, you are literally 2 classes from your degree, and I'm like, I don't care, I'll never use it. And he's like, yeah, but I did need it, right,
Right.
to get my master's. You have to have a bachelor's. You can't just go to a master's program. It's not how it works. You got to have a bachelor's. So
Right.
I did it, you know. So, and I also got to do two bachelor programs. I went through systems administration and security. I did my internship, and then I went through business administration. So I've got a lot of knowledge from that and a lot of experience, and so it's been fantastic. But I don't know.
Yeah, when I look at my life too, like I've been to law school, nursing school, some masters of education, and it's like I've been a juvenile probation officer, taught criminal law at Grand Valley State, and just all the different fraudulent claims at State Farm Insurance, and
Wait, you were a probation officer?
yep,
Oh my goodness. I never thought I would be sitting here talking to a probation officer on the other end
a
of like this.
juvenile probation
Well,
officer.
either way, a probation officer is a probation officer. It doesn't matter. Like
So
I've
surprised.
yeah, I've had
The
a lot.
judge sent me.
I've talked to a lot of probation officers. You know what I mean? Like I've been there, done that. So yes, but I was always very argumentative and defensive and passive aggressive with the law. And it's not that I hate the law. I did hate the law for a long time. And I have mad respect. Now the military, I have mad respect for the law. I know we need it. It's that, my whole family was law, and I was treated so growing up, I was treated like a convict. So my mom worked in a prison, right? My dad was a cop. So when I would get in trouble, they would lock me in my room and take everything away for like 2 months straight. So I would go to
Oh, for a
school, come
long
home.
time too, not
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was grounded one time for 6 months. So I would go and I would come, I would go to school, I would come home and sit in my room till the next day. And that went on for 6. So I was like in jail basically.
right.
And only in my room. I couldn't have anything. I couldn't do anything. And so that's how I was treated, like a prisoner, like a convict. So I had already spent years in jail before, I even went to jail before the first time I went to jail. So,
What was
but
it
yeah,
like in jail? Was it terrible or was it not too
yeah,
bad?
jail's terrible. Yes,
How
very
long were you
much
there
so.
for maximum?
The most I've ever done was like 90 days, but I think I got out in 55 days for good time or whatever. That's the most I've ever
What was
been.
the worst part about it? Boredom or living in your
Uh,
thoughts?
so before the military, yeah, you go insane. But after the military, I'm able to control my mind a little bit better, so I can shut down. I can just shut my mind down. Where some people would go crazy, I would watch them come in, because sometimes you're in a holding tank for a day or two, and there's
Right.
nothing. It's just a metal bench, a concrete floor, and a metal crapper, and there's nothing there, and you might be in there for 2 or 3 days. And so because of that, it can really drive a man insane.
Yeah.
And so, but I was able to shut down and whatever. But nah, it was mostly the thing for me is I don't want to brag or whatever, but the biggest problem that I have is when I get around people who aren't as, let's say, educated,
Hmm.
knowledgeable. They tend to get threatened,
Right.
and they feel threatened because I am very articulate. I say what I mean what I say, and I tell the truth. And that threatens people, especially here in this program. It threatens the social workers. It threatens a lot of people. It's hard to go. I was going to put a post up today, but I didn't want to sound too cocky. I was going to put a post up. Do you know what it's like to be in a room full of people when you're, you know, you're intelligent and your intellect is a little bit higher than theirs, and they get threatened. And so it's like, do I participate? Well, then if I don't participate, they're just going to say I'm not
Right.
participating. But if I participate, how do I dumb myself down? And you know, whatever. And it's so exhausting because then, you know, now to a lot of the guys, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's so smart, you know, blah blah blah. But then to the social workers and the people who
You're the
are
threat.
the threat, and so then it's really difficult for me. And so this is why it's very imperative that I graduate. This is why almost I want to get my doctorate, because you know what's really funny is I told you about my buddy who was the deputy director of the Michigan VA. He was getting his doctorate. He stopped, but he was getting his doctorate in mental health, or health administration, working in mental health field. And he said, you know, the only reason I want my doctorate is so I can tell people to shut the up. That's what because
Right.
you're an expert in your subject matter and no one can really
Mhm.
tell you anything. And so that's why he said, and it's like, I want to do that so I can just tell people, listen, unless you really, you're on my level with knowledge, like I don't really have any, but I don't want to do that. I would rather teach people than do that. But the problem is some people, you know, some people's ego gets too much. But so I don't mean to cut your interview short. I know we've been on here for like an hour and a half, but I have a class in
Oh, that's
15
right.
minutes.
Awesome. Well, Joshua,
So
um,
yeah,
I would love to continue this. We'll be in contact. Let me know whenever
yeah.
I
I
got the
mean,
summer
whenever.
off.
So
We,
so do I.
all right.
So
Well,
do I, basically.
tomorrow if you want, whatever.
Yeah,
We'll keep
that's
posting when
fine.
we can. So tomorrow,
Absolutely.
okay. Thanks
Yeah.
again. Enjoy your class, and as always, interesting story. Thanks so
Yes.
much.
All right. Yep.
Bye,
Have a
guys.
great night.
You
See
too.
ya.